Snow knifed across Chicago that Christmas Eve, driving low along the sidewalks, catching in the orange pools of streetlight. The wind howled between tired brick buildings and cut through winter coats as if they were paper. People hurried with their heads down and their bags pressed tight to their sides, chasing warmth and familiar rooms. Marcus Reed pushed a hand truck loaded with boxes toward a narrow stoop on a pond street. His boots were wet at the seams. His gloves were too thin. Each breath burned cold going in and left his lips in quick white bursts. He leaned his weight into the metal frame, the wheels bumping over a crack in the concrete. He balanced the boxes against the door and rang the bell. Music thumped faintly from inside, all bass and bells, and somewhere a burst of laughter rose above it. Warm light glowed around the frosted glass. A man in a green sweater opened the door, eyes already sliding toward the packages. The smell of roasted meat and cinnamon rolled out into the night. "Delivery for Amanda," Marcus said. The man checked the label, grunted, and took the boxes from his hands. The door swung shut again. The music and laughter cut off like someone had turned down the volume on another world. Marcus stood on the stoop for a moment, letting snow settle on his shoulders. Then he looked at the watch on his wrist. The second hand ticked, paused, then jerked ahead. The glass was scratched. The strap was cracked near the buckle. 7:12. He tightened his jacket and headed back along the sidewalk, the wind pushing at his side. A car rolled past with its windows fogged from the heat inside a string of colored lights taped along its back window. Faintly, he could hear a Christmas song through the glass, cheerful and tinny. Inside the van, his breath clouded the steering wheel until the weak heater began to spit out air that felt more like room temperature than warmth. He sat for a moment with both hands on the wheel, waiting for the shiver to leave his shoulders. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, thumb clumsy, in his glove. A company message blinked across the cracked screen. "Route complete. Happy holidays." Below it, another notification waited under a small pink heart icon. "Evelyn, stay warm out there. The city looks brutal tonight." The corners of his mouth twitched before he could stop them. He read the line twice. A drop of melted snow slid down his temple. He wiped it away with the back of his hand and let his thumb hover over the keyboard. He could see her face in his mind, not from a dozen angles, just from the single careful profile picture on the app. Hair pulled back, eyes steady, a smile that had more weight than shine. She had asked about his favorite Christmas memory 2 nights ago, and then left space for him to answer. He had not remembered the last time anyone had done that. He had told her about the year Zoe made him a card in kindergarten, more glue than paper, more glitter than words. Crooked stars, crooked letters. "You are the best dad in the galaxy." He kept that card in a shoebox under his bed. Sometimes on nights when the apartment felt too quiet, he took it out and read it again until the letters blurred. He typed, "Brutal is right. Almost done. Heading home." 3 dots appeared, blinked, disappeared, then came back. "Evelyn, home sounds perfect. Still on for tomorrow, 7 p.m., the Copper Cup." Marcus let his head rest back against the seat. The Copper Cup. He knew the place. A small cafe on Belmont with fogged windows and a chalkboard sign out front that changed every week. He had walked past it plenty of times on his way to cheaper spots, watching people sit inside with open laptops and ceramic mugs framed in yellow light. "Still on," he wrote. "I do not like being late." He sent it before he could rethink it and tucked the phone back into his pocket like it was something fragile. The last delivery on his sheet went quickly. A woman in leggings and fuzzy socks signed for a single box without taking her eyes off her phone. "Merry Christmas," she said as she closed the door, the words automatic. He set it back anyway and carried the empty hand truck to the van. Later, after he turned the keys in at the depot and stepped out into the alley, the cold hit him full in the face. The sky hung low and heavy, the clouds reflecting the dirty gold of the city lights. The snow had softened into a steady, patient fall. He walked to the bus stop on the corner and joined 2 other figures huddled in their coats. The ad on the shelter wall showed a smiling family in matching pajamas under a perfect tree. Marcus kept his eyes on the dark street instead. His watch said 8:04 when the bus arrived with a sigh of brakes. He climbed aboard, tapped his worn pass against the reader, and chose a seat by the window. The glass was smeared with fingerprints and the ghost of wiped-away condensation. Outside storefronts and houses slid by in streaks of gray and yellow, punctuated by occasional bursts of color where someone had gone heavy on lights. 3 stops later, he stepped back into the cold. His block was a row of tired brick buildings with narrow stoops and metal railings slick with ice. A plastic snowman leaned sideways in one yard, its painted smile chipped. Above, a few windows glowed. In one, a string of lights blinked in no clear pattern, 2 bulbs out. Somewhere down the street, someone's music player pumped out an old R&B Christmas cover, the bass muffled through walls. Marcus climbed the stairs to the third floor, one hand on the rail, the other wrapped around the strap of his bag. His knees ached in a familiar, dull way. The hallway smelled faintly of boiled cabbage and cleaner. At the door marked 3B, he stopped. From inside, under the murmur of a television, came a sound he knew better than any song. Zoe's laugh. It rose and cracked, part giggle, part cough, and something in his chest let go. He fit the key into the lock and turned it. Warmth met him as he stepped inside, thinner than he would have liked, but still a soft wall against the cold. The small space heater in the living room rattled quietly, its orange coils glowing. The air carried the smell of tomato soup and crayons. Daddy. Zoe launched herself off the sagging couch socks, sliding on the carpet as she ran. Her hair was gathered into 2 puffballs that listed slightly to one side. There was a streak of red marker on her wrist. He dropped his bag and opened his arms. She hit his chest with a small thud, and he scooped her up, lifting her clear off the floor for a second. "Hey, Bug," he said, "you guarding the place?" She leaned back to look at his face. Her nose wrinkled. "Your cheeks are red," she said. "You look like you lost a snowball fight." "That snow started it," he said. "I just walked into it." She considered this, then nodded once. We can say it was a tie. Over her shoulder, he saw the coffee table crowded with construction paper, safety scissors, and an uncapped glue stick. A drawing lay in the center. A small house stood under a crooked roof, 3 stick figures in front, circles falling all around them like dots of snow. He set Zoe down and kicked off his wet boots by the door. "Hungry?" he asked. "Mad oh bow." She nodded. I waited. Soup is better with 2 people. He moved into the narrow kitchen, reached for the pot on the back burner, and stirred the skin that had formed on top. The weight of the day settled into his shoulders. Under it, another thought waited, small and bright. Tomorrow, at 7 in a warm cafe he had only seen from the outside, someone would be waiting to meet him. On the 42nd floor, the city looked quieter than it felt. Evelyn Hart stood with one hand on the cool glass of her office window and watched snow twist along the river far below. From up here, the streets were thin gray lines, the cars just slow-moving dots with glowing eyes. Christmas lights wrapped around lampposts, but the sound of the city did not reach her. It was all light without noise. Behind her, the conference room table was still scattered with fabric swatches and finish samples. Ivory slate brushed brass-smoked oak. The last of her team had left half an hour ago, offering quick goodbyes and holiday wishes as they pulled on their coats. Their voices had faded down the hallway, their footsteps growing distant. She had stayed. Her blazer hung over the back of a chair, and now, her white blouse sleeves rolled to her elbows. A stack of folders sat aligned on her desk, the corners perfectly square. Next to them, her laptop slept with its screen lid closed, a single green light blinking at the edge. On the wall opposite the window, huge frame photographs displayed the work of Heartline Studios, a penthouse living room overlooking Central Park, a Malibu kitchen that belonged in a magazine, a Texas ranch home where not one cushion was out of place. They were all beautiful, every line considered, every texture planned. None of them were hers. Her own name appeared in silver letters on the wall near the entrance. Heartline Studios. She had chosen the typeface herself, clean, modern, slightly softened at the edges. Something that looked like it would still make sense 10 years from now. Her phone buzzed on the desk. She turned away from the window and picked it up. A calendar reminder slid across the screen first. Board breakfast at 9 on the 26th. Call with investors in London at 2. A list of tasks for a week she had not reached yet. Beneath that, a small pink heart icon flashed. App notification. Evelyn tapped it. The last message in the thread was hers from earlier in the afternoon. "Evelyn, stay warm out there. The city looks brutal tonight." Below it, his reply had arrived just minutes ago. "Marcus Brutal is right. Almost done. Heading home." She pictured him in that moment. Not the vague idea she had before they had started talking, but the man in the photos he had finally allowed his friend to take. Dark eyes, tired and watchful. Shoulders that looked like they had carried more than boxes. The small figure of his daughter half hidden at his side, laughing at something off camera. She glanced back at the window. From this height, she could not see anyone clearly, just dots. Evelyn walked to her desk, picked up her glasses, and slid them on. The office sharpened slightly around her. The snow outside gained detail. She sat tucked one foot under her and flipped the phone in her hand once. Then she typed, "Home sounds perfect. Still on for tomorrow, 7 p.m. the Copper Cup." She read the sentence twice. It sounded almost casual, almost. Her thumb hovered over send for a heartbeat, then settled. It left in a blue bubble. Within seconds, another line appeared at the bottom of the thread. Marcus still on. I do not like being late. She smiled despite herself and set the phone down. That part at least sounded like truth. His messages never arrived in perfect polished blocks. Sometimes there was a missed comma, sometimes an extra space, sometimes a word that had clearly been backspaced and replaced. Nothing about them had been crafted. In her world, everything was crafted. A knock sounded at the glass wall of her office. She turned. Barry, her project director, lifted a gloved hand in a wave as he passed. You heading out, Evelyn? He asked, voice muffled through the partially open door. In a minute, she said. You get home safe. He grinned. My wife would come drag me out by the tie if I stayed. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. The door clicked shut. The sound echoed for a second in the high-ceilinged room. Evelyn gathered the folders into her bag, shut off the desk lamp, and flicked the main switch. The recessed lighting dimmed to a soft glow. Only the hallway track lights stayed on, guiding her between glass walls and closed doors. In the elevator, she pressed the button for the lobby and watched her reflection in the stainless steel. Black hair pulled into a low knot, a single strand that had slipped loose and curled near her jaw. Thin lines at the corners of her eyes that no concealer could erase entirely. She pressed her lips together and exhaled slowly through her nose. The lobby was all polished stone and silence. A giant tree soared near the windows, wrapped in white lights and silver ribbons, so symmetrical it almost looked like a rendering. 2 security guards talked quietly near the front desk. She offered them a small wave as she passed. Outside, the wind hit her with less force than it had him. Her coat was thick wool, her scarf cashmere, her driver waiting at the curb in a sleek black car with the heat already on. The glass fogged in gentle patches. Good evening, Ms. Hart, the driver said as he opened the door. Evening, Jonah. Home, please. The city slid around them, lights reflecting and doubling on the wet streets. Through the windshield, snowflakes streaked toward them, and then up, tossed aside by the motion. Evelyn watched the patterns of other people's windows blur by. A child jumping on a couch, someone carrying a tray into a dining room, a couple leaning in close over a table. By the time the car glided into the underground garage beneath her building, her phone had buzzed twice more. Work emails, a holiday greeting from a vendor, no new messages from Marcus. Her penthouse elevator opened directly into her living room. The lights came on in sequence motion sensors triggered by her steps. Warm white along the ceiling, soft pools near the seating areas. She had designed this space herself, long before she could afford anything like it, in a cheap studio apartment with a crooked floor and a view of a brick wall. She had drawn versions of it on napkins and in margins of notebooks. The final result was almost exactly what she had imagined. Floor-to-ceiling windows, wall-to-wall, hardwood built-in shelving. A sectional sofa, big enough to hold a small crowd. 2 low tables with stacked art books and a vase of branches sprayed white. She dropped her keys into a ceramic bowl near the door and shrugged off her coat. The quiet followed her as she crossed the open space to the kitchen. The refrigerator door opened with a soft suction sound. Inside, there was a bottle of white wine, a container of salad, a carton of almond milk, 3 different kinds of mustard, and very little else. She took out the salad and set it on the counter, then changed her mind and reached for a glass instead. While the wine filled it, she glanced toward the far wall, where a narrow shelf held a small collection that did not match the rest of the room. 5 snow globes in a neat row, each one different. One held a tiny cabin beside a painted pine tree. Another showed a city skyline under soft white dust. The third, slightly chipped at the base, contained a child's version of a house. The last 2 were more expensive, bought in airport gift shops on her way back from meetings that had run long. She carried her glass over and picked up the chipped one. The base was plastic, the clear dome slightly dulled with age. Inside, 3 figures stood in front of the house with the crooked roof, their painted faces almost worn away from years of shaking. Her mother had sent it in a cardboard box the first Christmas after Evelyn had moved away from home. There had been a note scribbled on the packing paper in blue ink. For your new place. So you remember there is always a light on somewhere for you. Evelyn rolled the globe in her hand, watching the white flakes lift and fall. The living room filled with the faint hum of the heating system. Somewhere below, a siren wailed, distant and small. Her phone buzzed again. She set the globe back in its place and reached for it. A photo notification from her sister 2 states away. Nieces in matching pajamas, their faces half hidden behind wrapping paper. A tree that leaned slightly, ornaments clustered near the bottom, where small hands had placed them. She typed a quick heart and a happy Christmas, then opened the dating app thread again. The blue bubbles lined the screen. Her question, his answer. A longer block from the night before his story about glitter and construction paper, and a messy little card he still kept. Her thumb paused over the keyboard. She was used to men whose first questions had been about her company, about how she had built it, about who she knew. Men who used the word impressive like a compliment and an assessment at the same time. Men who talked a great deal and listened very little. When she had asked Marcus about his favorite Christmas memory, there had been a space of silence on the screen that made her think he might not answer at all. Then his words had poured in clumsy and vivid and strangely gentle. He had written about soup with too much salt, and a heater that rattled, and a little girl with glue on her fingers and glitter in her hair. Now looking at the same conversation, the same words, she felt an ache somewhere under her ribs that surprised her with its depth. Evelyn set the phone on the arm of the sofa, curled her feet beneath her, and let her head fall back for a moment. The skyline burned quietly beyond the glass, a jagged line of steel and light against the snow-filled sky. In a small corner of that sprawl on a block, she could not see from up here, a man was probably hanging his wet coat on a hook and stirring a pot for his daughter. She opened her eyes again and reached for the phone, tracing the edge of the screen with one finger holding the thin link between her world and his. A few nights before the snow came in hard, their conversation had begun to stretch. It started with a short question that blinked onto Marcus's cracked screen, while Zoe brushed her teeth in the bathroom, humming a song from a cartoon. "Evelyn, what was your favorite Christmas?" He had stared at those words longer than he meant to. The kitchen smelled faintly of toast and dish soap. The heater gave a tired rattle in the corner. He leaned back against the counter phone in one hand, the other resting on the edge of the sink. Favorite assumed there had been many. He thought first of years that were easier. Years with a paycheck that arrived on time, with store-bought gifts that did not need coupons to justify them. Then his mind slid past all of that and landed on one image that would not move. Construction paper, glitter, small hands. He sat at the table and typed slowly. "Marcus, probably the year Zoe made me a card. She was 5. There was glitter in my hair for a week." He hesitated, then added another line. "Marcus, I still have it." On the other side of the city, in a bedroom that looked like it had stepped out of a magazine layout, Evelyn lay on top of her duvet with her knees bent and her laptop balanced beside her. The blue light had been starting to give her a headache. She closed it and flipped the phone upright. A card, she thought, and smiled. "Evelyn, that sounds like a powerful card. What did it say?" "Down in 3B, Marcus laughed under his breath. Zoe spat into the sink and called through the open door. "Are you texting the snow globe lady again?" He cleared his throat. "Spit, rinse, then bed." She stepped into the doorway, hair-wild toothbrush dripping foam onto her pajamas. "You smiled," she said. "You only smile at me, Mrs. Alvarez, and your phone." "Maybe my phone is very funny," he said. "Bed, go." She rolled her eyes in an exaggerated circle, then disappeared, bare feet thudding softly down the short hall. Marcus looked at the blank message box. He typed exactly what had been written on the card, including the spelling, then deleted it, then typed it again. "Marcus, you are the best dad in the galaxy." He added, "Marcus, all caps." There were stars. Some looked like potatoes. "Do not tell her I said that." When the message sent, he set the phone down and swiped a circle through the glitter that had dried years ago in a groove in the table. He liked that it had refused to leave no matter how often he wiped. In the penthouse, the text popped up between a calendar alert and a bank notification. Evelyn read it twice, then a third time, and felt something inside her loosen. She could see it in her mind. A too bright sheet of paper, edges bent. Stars that did look like potatoes. A small girl pressing the card into her father's hands with the kind of pride that had no doubt attached to it. She rolled onto her side, propped her head on her hand, and typed, "Evelyn, that is objectively perfect. Potatoes are very underrated as stars." She thought for a second and added, "Evelyn, do you have a favorite memory that is just for you, not as a dad, just Marcus?" There was a longer pause this time. Upstairs, neighbors walked across the ceiling in heavy steps. Marcus listened to their root living room to kitchen, then back again. The apartment ticked as pipes shifted. Just Marcus. There had not been much space for that version of himself lately. It had been swallowed slowly by late shifts and grocery budgets and bedtime stories. He tucked Zoe in, smoothing her blanket, kissing the same spot on her forehead he always did. Her lashes fluttered, then settled. Her breathing lengthened. When he came back to the table, his phone lit the room with its small square of white. He thought of his mother singing along badly to old soul records while she wrapped gifts at the dining table. He thought of late games of cards with his uncle when everyone else had gone to sleep. He thought of a church basement that smelled like coffee and powdered sugar, and the orange light that always seemed to hover above the stage where kids in bathrobes pretended to be shepherds. "Marcus, I liked the year my mom burned the rolls and we ate them anyway. We called them extra toasted and pretended it was on purpose. I was 10. She laughed so hard she cried. He stopped there. There was more to that memory, but the rest was not as clean. The next year there had been no rolls at all burned or otherwise. He did not add that part. In her darkened bedroom, Evelyn held the phone above her face and tasted a bit of salt on her tongue that had nothing to do with food. She could see a woman she had never met standing in a small kitchen laughing so hard, she cried because something had gone a little wrong and a little right at the same time. Evelyn, I love that. Her thumb hovered. She rarely shared first. For years she had learned to listen without revealing much. It had been safer that way. People took what she gave and built assumptions on top of it. The less material they had, the less construction they could do. Tonight, the silence in her perfect living room felt heavier than usual. Evelyn, mine was the year my dad took us to chop down a tree, and we picked one that was way too big. We had to cut the top off and tie it to a hook in the ceiling to keep it from falling over. She exhaled and let herself add one more line. Evelyn, my mom pretended to be mad, but I could tell she liked how ridiculous it looked. The 3 dots appeared again. Marcus, that sounds like a serious engineering problem. She smiled into the dark. Evelyn, you would have handled it, I am sure. Marcus, I would have measured first, maybe. A small warmth spread through the line of his shoulders. He could almost see her cheeks flushed from laughing in some cramped living room far away from this city. It suited her more in his mind than the glass walls and silent elevator he knew she worked inside now. The nights that followed took on a rhythm. During the day, they orbited their separate worlds. Marcus loaded trucks, carried boxes, fixed a leaking pipe in a bathroom that smelled like lemon cleaner and bleach. He walked Zoe to school with her backpack bouncing against her shoulders and her boots scuffing the slick sidewalk. Evelyn moved between meetings, sample rooms, calls with suppliers. She traced floor plans with the side of her hand and listened to clients talk about statement pieces and natural light and creating experiences for their guests. Her internal clock broke the day into 15-minute segments, each one filled. In the evenings, the schedule shifted without a memo. When Zoe's nightlight clicked on and she finally stopped talking, when the email ping slowed to nothing, and the office lights down the block went dark, one by one their phones lit up. They sent pictures. Nothing polished, nothing filtered. Marcus took a photo of the shoebox where he kept the Galaxy card, the edges of other papers pressed behind it. He took another of the heater rattling in the corner, with Zoe's stuffed rabbit perched on top like a mascot. Evelyn sent a photo of her coffee mug beside a stack of fabric samples, a tiny corner of the snow globe shelf, visible in the background. Then one closer of the chipped globe with the crooked house. Marcus, is that your place? Evelyn, the globe or the room? Marcus, both. Evelyn, the globe is from my parents' house. The room is mine. Sometimes it feels like neither fully belong to me. He read that line 3 times. The idea that someone with a river view and more square footage than he could picture could feel that way sat strangely in his mind. Marcus, the globe looks like home. Evelyn studied those 4 words. They were simple, but they landed with weight. Her fingers hovered. Evelyn, do you collect them? Marcus, not on purpose. Zoe has 3. One is missing the roof. She says it is for better stargazing. Evelyn laughed, the sound echoing softly off the high ceiling. Evelyn, she sounds like someone I would like. Marcus, she is the boss here. I just pay rent. Silence settled for a few minutes as both rooms listened to their respective heaters. Then a new message arrived. Evelyn, I have an idea. Tell me if it is strange. Marcus, I will. Evelyn, I am in the city every week. I walk by the Copper Cup all the time and never go in. That feels like a waste. Would you like to meet there on Christmas Eve, 7 p.m.? He read the message and felt his throat go a little dry. Christmas Eve. His thumb hovered over reply. On the couch, Zoe snored lightly, one arm flung above her head. He looked at the clock on the stove, then at the watch on his wrist. The 2 times did not match. Marcus, I would like that. He added before he could talk himself out of it. Marcus, 7 p.m. I will be there. The morning before Christmas Eve began like every other winter morning in 3B with the sound of the heater protesting its own existence. Marcus woke before the alarm as he usually did. The room was gray and faintly blue at the edges where light from the street seeped in around the blinds. For a few seconds he lay still and listened. Pipes creaked. Someone in the apartment above ran water. A car horn sounded far off, then cut short. His eyes went to the ceiling, then to the digital clock on the crate that served as a nightstand. 6:03. The red numbers blinked slowly. His wrist felt strange without his watch. He realized he had fallen asleep with it on, still clasped there. The band had left a faint groove in his skin. He turned his hand and looked at it. The glass caught a weak reflection of the streetlight, The second hand jerked along a fraction of a beat behind what the clock insisted was true. 7, he thought. Tomorrow. He slid out of bed quietly, moving carefully on the cold floor so the boards would not creak too loud. Zoe slept in the small room at the end of the hall. The door was half open. He could see the glow of her nightlight, a cheap plastic moon that cast yellow arcs on the wall. In the kitchen, the linoleum felt colder than usual. He filled the kettle, set it on the burner, and watched the flame catch. The blue ring curled around the metal, steady and low. His phone sat on the table where he had left it. No new messages, no work alerts yet. He picked it up anyway and opened the app. The thread with Evelyn stared back at him. The last message sat at the bottom. 7 p.m. I will be there. He frowned and checked the timestamp again. He could not even remember how many times he had checked it already. Stop looking at it like it is going to disappear, he told himself quietly. The kettle began to hiss. He took a mug from the cabinet chipped near the handle and poured hot water over a tea bag. A whisper of steam rose and disappeared. Behind him, a soft shuffling announced that Zoe was awake before her own alarm. She appeared in the doorway, hair a cloud around her head, pajamas twisted at one knee. Is it still cold? She asked, voice raspy. Colder, he said. Merry almost Christmas. She padded into the room and climbed onto one of the chairs, tucking her legs up so her toes did not touch the floor. Do we have hot chocolate? She asked. We have hot water, he said, and imagination. She pressed her lips together. Imagination tastes better with marshmallows. He smiled at that and reached into the cabinet. There were in fact 2 packets left at the back of the shelf. He held one up. Look what imagination found. Her eyes lit quick and bright, then narrowed. You were saving those, she said, for a special day. He tore the packet open and poured the powder into her mug. This counts. She stirred, watching the dark swirl in the water. Are you nervous? She asked suddenly. He paused. About what? The snow globe lady. He reached for the sugar, decided against it, and put the container back. A little, he admitted. How do you know about nervous anyway? She shrugged one shoulder. You cleaned the bathroom last night. You only do that when people are maybe coming over. He laughed once, then let the sound fade. She is not coming over, he said. We are meeting at a cafe, just talking, maybe drinking something that is not from a packet. Zoe watched him over the rim of her mug, eyes too serious for her age. Do you like her? She asked. He thought of Evelyn's messages, her dry jokes, the way she had laughed at the idea of potato stars, the line about the tree tied to a ceiling hook. I do, he said simply. Does she know about me? Zoe asked. She knows you like snow globes, he said, and that you are the boss here. Zoe seemed to consider that. If she does not like me, can you still like her? He sat down across from her. The chair creaked in a familiar way. I do not know, he said carefully. I think if someone wants to know me, they have to know you too. We are a package deal. She nodded once as if confirming an internal rule. Then I hope she likes packages, she said. Can I wear my red sweater tomorrow? He blinked. Tomorrow you are staying with Mrs. Alvarez while I go to meet her. Zoe's nose wrinkled. Only boring grown-ups call it meet her instead of date. He let out a breath and stared at the steam above his tea. We will see, he said. First I have to check if Mrs. Alvarez is still feeling okay. It is cold. People get sick. He looked at the clock again. Time did not slow for him to think. Later that morning, after he had walked Zoe 3 blocks to school with her mitten in his hand and her hat slipping sideways over one eyebrow, he stopped outside a small brick house with a green wreath on the door. He rang the bell, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. The icy steps held a skin of snow. The door opened to reveal Mrs. Alvarez wrapped in a thick robe. Gray hair piled on her head, eyes alert but soft. Buenos dias, Marcus, she said. You are early. Is everything all right? Morning, he said. Everything is fine. I was just wondering if tomorrow night still works for you to watch Zoe. Only if you feel up to it. I can figure something else out. You have your big plans? She said, waving a hand. The answer is yes. I will feed her, and we will watch the movie with the singing animals again. She will fall asleep halfway. I will carry her to bed and pretend she is still small enough that it is easy. He smiled, some tension easing from his shoulders. Thank you, he said. I owe you. You owe me nothing, she said. I like having noise in my house. Go work. Think about what you are going to say to this woman. Do not overshare. Do not undershare. Just be yourself. That is a lot of instructions, he said. You can handle it. She patted his arm. And cut your nails. You are going on a date. He looked at his hands on the way down. The steps laughed softly in the cold air and tucked them into his pockets. Across town, on a street lined with glossy storefronts and twinkling lights, Evelyn stood in front of her open closet and felt utterly unprepared. Rows of clothes stared back at her. Structured jackets, silk blouses, tailored pants. Dresses that had appeared in magazines. Shoes that made statements in boardrooms. None of them looked like something she wanted to wear to a place with chalkboards and mismatched mugs. She pulled out a black dress, held it in front of herself, and put it back almost immediately. Too formal. A bright red sweater followed, then returned to its hanger. Too deliberate. Her phone lay on the bed screen dark. No new emails, no new messages. The silence left room for other thoughts. She reached for a simple soft gray sweater tucked between two sharper pieces. It had been a gift from her sister 2 Christmases ago, slightly oversized with sleeves that could be pushed up or pulled down over her hands when she was cold. She put it on over a white tank and moved in front of the mirror. It fell easily over her shoulders, not forcing her into a shape she did not feel like holding. Next came jeans dark wash without design or distressing, flat boots that could handle slush, a long camel coat that had been worth every dollar in Chicago winters. She took out her usual watch, a thin gold piece that matched multiple outfits and slid perfectly under the cuff of a blazer. She turned it in her hand, then placed it back in the tray. In the small dish beside it sat another watch, older with a leather strap and a scuffed face. Her father had given it to her when she finished graduate school. She had worn it at her first job at her first pitch meeting, until it eventually ended up at the back of a drawer when the gold one came along. She buckled the leather strap around her wrist and watched the hands tick. The watch felt heavier than she remembered. On her way out of the bedroom, she paused in front of the snow globe shelf. Her fingers hovered above each dome before settling on the chipped one with the crooked house. She almost picked it up, then instead chose the small globe with the city skyline. Inside it, tiny buildings rose under a dome of glass, white flakes resting on rooftops when it was still. She turned, it watched the flakes lift and scatter, then fall again. Without letting herself think too hard, she slipped the globe into the deep pocket of her coat. In the office later that afternoon, she moved through the last tasks of the week with a jitter under her skin that had nothing to do with caffeine. She signed off on a lighting plan. She approved a fabric order. She answered 3 emails from a client who wanted reassurance that their foyer would feel impressive but not intimidating. Her answers were clear, professional. She knew how to play that role. Between meetings, she opened the app to look once more at the short line 7 p.m. I will be there. She had done her share of waiting in life. Outside classrooms for parents who were held up at work. At restaurant tables with unfinished glasses of wine. In her own head for someone to see past the title on her business card. This felt different, and she did not entirely trust that feeling. On the south side, the afternoon blurred into early evening. Marcus finished his last shift before the holiday returned the keys to the depot and jogged the 2 blocks to the bus stop, breath puffing in front of him. The sky had gone lead gray low with clouds that promised more snow. At home, he handed Zoe off to Mrs. Alvarez with a list that she waved away and a bag of snacks that she insisted on adding to. We will be fine, she said. Go before you change your mind. I am not going to change my mind, he said. Good, she replied. Then do not be late. Back in his apartment, he showered quickly and changed into the shirt he had ironed twice. It was not new, but it was the one that made him feel less like he had spent the entire day hauling other people's things. He ran a comb through his hair, looked at himself in the mirror above the small sink, and tried to imagine how he might appear to a stranger who knew him only in words. The watch on his wrist showed 6:10. The stove clock showed 6:16. He tapped the watch face lightly, as if that might nudge it into agreement. On the table, his phone buzzed once. A weather alert rolled across the top. Winter storm warning in effect from 7 p.m. He stared at the line, then at his own reflection. Of course, he said softly. He took his coat from the hook by the door, checked his pockets for his wallet and bus pass, and closed his hand around the small folded scrap of paper he had slipped inside earlier, the one with the address of the copper cup, written in his own uneven print. The hallway outside 3B felt colder than it should have. The old radiator at the far end clicked, but gave off no heat. Marcus pulled the door shut behind him and tested the knob to make sure it caught. The lights overhead hummed softly. He took 1 step toward the stairs. His phone rang. The sound sharp in the narrow space made him freeze. For 1 second, his mind jumped to Evelyn. Then he saw the name on the screen. Mrs. Alvarez. He answered quickly. Hey, everything okay? Her voice came through thinner than usual, a rough edge scraping the words. Marcus mijo, I am so sorry. I tried to wait. I thought it would pass. His fingers tightened around the phone. What happened? I think it is the flu, she said. A cough rattled on the line. I am burning up. I do not want to spread anything to her. You should come get Zoe. He glanced down the staircase, then at his watch. The second hand limped forward, indifferent. What about now, he asked. Is she all right? She is fine, Mrs. Alvarez said. She is drawing at my table. She keeps telling me about your friend from the phone. I can keep her here until you arrive. Just please do not leave her all night. He let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. I will be there in 2 minutes. He hung up and turned back to the door key already out. The lock protested once, then gave. Inside, the apartment held the faint warmth from his shower and the ghost of soap. He crossed to the window and looked out. Snowflakes fell in a thicker curtain than before, turning the streetlights into blurry halos. His phone lit again with the weather alert. Winter storm warning in effect from 7 p.m. This time he swiped it away. He locked the door a second time and took the stairs 2 at a time, his boots thudding against the old wood. The cold bit at his face as he hit the sidewalk and jogged the short distance to the small brick house with the green wreath. When he knocked, the door opened more slowly this time. Mrs. Alvarez stood hunched in the frame, her robe pulled tight, a sheen of sweat on her forehead. The television muttered softly behind her in Spanish. The air smelled like menthol and soup. I am so sorry, she said, voice rough. I thought I would feel better by tonight. Zoe appeared at her side, holding a marker in one hand, the other stained with green. Dad, look. She lifted a sheet of paper. The drawing showed a cafe sign, a table, 3 stick figures. All of them had snowflake dots around their heads. He forced a smile. That is great, Bug. He looked at Mrs. Alvarez again and shook his head. Do not apologize, he said. Go lie down. I should not have asked you in the first place. She waved a hand. You should ask for help, she said, but sometimes the body has its own plans. Go. Take your girl. Be careful in that snow. Zoe looked between them, sensing the shift in tone. Are we not watching the singing animals? She asked. You and I will, another time, Mrs. Alvarez said, smoothing the girl's hair with a trembling hand. Tonight you have somewhere else to be. Marcus hesitated in the doorway. I can still go, he said quietly, to no one in particular. I can text and cancel, or reschedule. It is just a date. The words tasted thin as he said them. Zoe's brows drew together. You promised, she said. You told me you were going. He had. He thought of the way he had typed, I will be there, and how easy it had felt to press send compared to this. I cannot leave you alone here, he said. Her chin lifted. Then take me, she said. He stared at her. Behind her, the television flashed images of palm trees and a beach, a commercial out of season. You do not bring kids on dates, he said. Why not, she asked. Mrs. Alvarez brings her grandkids everywhere. They are loud. That is different. How Zoe's voice thinned. Mom said if someone wants to know you, they have to know me too. Remember, we are the package deal. The words hit something soft and bruised inside him. He remembered sitting at a hospital bedside, Michelle's hand weak in his. He remembered her saying it with a smile that did not quite reach her tired eyes. Do not hide her to make someone else comfortable. If they do not want all of you, they do not deserve any of you. He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. You know this cafe is far, he said. It is cold. The snow is going to get worse. Your feet will get tired. Your nose will turn red. You might get bored. She lifted the drawing as if it were evidence. I made a picture, she said, so I will not get bored. He huffed out a breath that was almost a laugh. You really want to come? She nodded, hair bouncing. He looked at Mrs. Alvarez, who gave a small shrug that said both, this is not my decision, and she is right. All right, he said, go get your boots, the warm ones. Zoe squealed, then winced when she remembered the woman beside her was sick. Sorry, she whispered, and darted toward the hallway. Marcus stepped inside long enough to help her pull on her coat and button it up all the way to her throat. He tucked her scarf into the gap and pulled her hat down over her ears. As he straightened, he felt the familiar mix of pride and worry settle over his shoulders. He thanked Mrs. Alvarez once more and promised to bring soup and medicine by the next day. Then he and Zoe stepped back into the evening. The air had thickened. Snow came down with more weight now, flakes landing on their eyelashes, their coats, the tops of their boots. How far is it? Zoe asked, as they started toward bus. Oh, toward Biki. Not that far, he said. We will take the bus, then walk a little. The stop was 3 blocks away. By the time they reached it, his cheeks ached from the wind, and Zoe's mittens were dusted white. A small group of people huddled under the shelter collars, up noses red. The digital screen above the route map flickered. BS 16, delayed, bus, 9 delayed. A man in a red beanie swore under his breath. Been standing here 20 minutes already, he muttered to no one in particular. Storm hit faster than they said. Marcus checked his watch, 6:30. Zoe pressed her face to the side of the shelter, leaving a foggy circle on the plexiglass. Is that our bus? She asked every time headlights appeared. Not yet, he said as taillights passed and turned the corner. 5 minutes stretched to 10, then to 15. The crowd thinned as people gave up and went back the way they had come. The wind had found a way into his collar. He shifted closer to Zoe, using his body as a shield. The screen flickered again. Bus 16. Delayed, bus 9, no service. His stomach dipped. A woman in a blue coat groaned and stalked off, shoes slipping on the thin layer of packed snow. Zoe leaned her head back against his side. Is the bus broken? She asked. Looks like it is not coming, he said. Then how do we get there? He looked down the long stretch of street that led toward downtown. The lights in that direction glowed faintly through the dense air. His brain started measuring without meaning to. Distance, time, wind speed, 70 close. He could feel a familiar argument beginning in his chest. One voice told him to call it, to accept that the night had decided for him. Another pointed to the thread on his phone, to the way Zoe had looked at her, drawing to the part of himself that was tired of backing out. He considered calling the cafe. He did not even know if he could find the number quickly. The battery icon on his screen sat lower than he liked. Zoe's hand crept into his. You do not have to go, she said. If it is too hard, we can just drink hot chocolate here. He looked down at her. There was no blame in her face, only an attempt to protect him from his own disappointment. He tightened his grip on her gloved fingers. How are your feet? He asked. Cold, she said, but they are attached. Can you walk a little more? She nodded. He looked down the street again and made a choice that felt less like logic and more like something simple and stubborn. We will walk, he said. If it gets too bad, we turn around. Zoe's eyes widened. Walk to downtown. Not all the way, he said. Just enough to see if the buses are running on the bigger streets. They left the shelter and stepped back into the open, snowflakes caught in the weak glow of the street lamps, appearing suddenly and then dissolving as they fell. The sidewalk had become a patchy mix of slush and hard-packed ice. Each step made a small crunch. At the first intersection, a line of cars crawled forward with their hazard lights blinking. Horns complained in short bursts. The walk signal took a long time to change. Zoe slipped once, her boot skidding out from under her. Marcus caught her by the elbow and steadied her. You all right? He asked. She nodded, teeth clenched. They walked another block. Her steps shortened. He shifted his hand from her elbow to her shoulder, keeping her close to his side. Halfway across a side street, her toe caught on a hidden ridge of ice. This time she went down hard on one knee. The sound of it on the pavement made his teeth clench. She sucked in a breath, eyes squeezing shut, then opened them wide. Tears gathered quickly, but did not fall. It hurts, she said, voice thin. I know, he said, crouching beside her. The snow soaked through the knees of his jeans in seconds. Let me see. He peeled back her mitten and touched the edge of her pant leg, pulling it up just far enough to see a scrape already reddening a smear of dirt and ice crystals. Nothing is broken, he said. It will sting for a bit. He fumbled in his coat pocket for the folded napkin he kept there. He dabbed gently at the skin, wiping away grit. Cold bit into his fingers. His breath came faster than the effort warranted. We can go home, he said quietly. We can say the weather won. Zoe looked past him to where the buildings ahead grew taller, their windows glowing against the gray. Will she still be there? She asked. He followed her gaze along the line of the street. I hope so, he said. Zoe blinked, a single tear finally slipping free and tracking down her cheek. She straightened her shoulders as much as she could in her crouched position. You said you do not like being late, she said. You always say you have to finish what you start. He let out a rough breath that turned white between them. That is true. Then we should keep going, she said. We can tell her the weather was mean. He laughed at that, the sound tangled with something softer. You sure? I am sure, she said. He pulled her into a quick hug, feeling her small body shiver against his chest, then helped her up. She tested her weight on the sore knee, winced, then nodded. All right, he said. We keep going. He took her hand, again their fingers fitting through layers of fabric, and turned them both toward the bright smear of downtown through the falling snow. By 6:30, the wind had turned Belmont into a tunnel of stinging air. Evelyn pulled her coat tighter as she stepped out of the rideshare and onto the salted sidewalk. The driver's taillights smeared red across the wet pavement before disappearing into the curtain of snow. The Copper Cup looked exactly the way she had always imagined it from the outside. Small brick-fronted windows fogged at the corners. A wreath hung crookedly on the door, strands of lights looped inside the glass. Someone had drawn a steaming mug on the sandwich board out front, the chalk lines thick and cheerful. Inside, the bell over the door chimed softly when she entered. Warm air wrapped around her legs first, then her shoulders. The smell of coffee cinnamon and something buttery met her nose. Indie jazz hummed low from speakers tucked among exposed beams. She unwound her scarf, slowly letting her eyes adjust. The crowd was light but steady. 2 students in hoodies shared a laptop at the long bar covered in notes and empty cups. A family occupied a corner table, the parents leaning close over their drinks while a toddler smeared chocolate on the high chair tray. An older man sat alone reading a newspaper, glasses perched low on his nose. Behind the counter, a woman with streaks of silver in her dark hair and a tattoo peeking from under her sleeve looked up. "Hi there," she said, smiling. "Cold one, huh?" You could say that Evelyn answered. "What can I get you?" "Peppermint tea, please," she said. "And if it is all right, could I sit near the window?" "Sure thing." The woman nodded toward a two-top by the front glass. "That one is all yours. I will bring it over." Evelyn walked to the table and slid out the chair, setting her bag on the empty one across from her. From here, she could see the street in the doorway and a slice of the counter. Snowflakes hit the glass in soft splats and then melted, leaving clear trails behind. She took off her coat and folded it over the back of the chair, smoothing the sleeve where it caught. Her watch showed 6:32. Her phone showed the same. The time felt like a small agreement between 2 separate worlds. Her reflection hovered faintly in the window, superimposed over the sidewalk. She tucked a piece of hair behind her ear and looked away from the double image. The barista arrived with a white mug on a saucer, steam rising in a gentle spiral. "Here you go," she said. "Let me know if you want anything to eat. We have ginger cookies that taste like actual ginger." Evelyn smiled. "Thank you. I might work up the courage." The woman laughed once and moved back behind the counter. For a few minutes, Evelyn wrapped her hands around the mug and watched the tea darken. Heat seeped into her fingers, then up into her wrists. Her pulse felt a little too quick. She checked the app once as if the thread might have changed in the last half hour. It had not. The last line still sat there. 7 p.m. I will be there. She locked the screen and set the phone face down, the pink heart icon pressed to the wood. Outside, the sky deepened to a bruised purple, the streetlights brightening in response. Cars crawled by, exhaust hanging low. A gust of wind shoved a plastic bag down the sidewalk like it was being chased. At the far end of the block, a figure could be seen trudging through the snow, head bent, holding the hand of someone much smaller. Evelyn did not notice. She focused instead on the clock on the wall above the counter. Its hands clicked smoothly, unbothered. 7 o'clock arrived with a small shift in the crowd that comes when people begin to think about the next thing. A couple near the door stood, unwound scarves, zipped jackets. They left with their arms linked. She added a sugar packet to her tea, then stirred it slowly, though she preferred it plain. The spoon tapped the side of the mug in a steady rhythm. Maybe the trains are slow, she thought. Maybe he misjudged how long it would take, or the bus wipers are fighting the snow. On a bus halfway to downtown, Marcus wiped a line across the glass with the edge of his glove. The bus had finally appeared after they had walked almost to the next major intersection, its headlights glowing dim through the white. He had flagged it down with his free hand, while holding Zoe close with the other. Now they sat pressed together on the slick plastic seats, 2/3 of the way down the aisle. Zoe leaned against his side, cheeks flushed deep pink, her drawing folder clutched in her lap. "How much longer?" she asked. "Not long," he said, though he had to squint past foggy windows to read the approaching cross streets. His watch read 7:14. The bus inched along brakes, sighing at every light. In the copper cup, the barista glanced at the window seat and then at the clock. "Waiting on someone?" she asked mildly as she wiped the counter near the espresso machine. Evelyn looked up a little startled. "Yes," she said. "Traffic is probably a mess." "Storm came in faster than they said," the woman replied. "People will be late tonight. No crime in that." She moved away to deliver a drink, leaving a faint trail of hazelnut in the air. Evelyn checked her phone again. No new messages. A part of her hand wanted to type first, some light joke about the weather, or a half-serious, "Are you lost?" Instead, she placed the phone back down. She had told herself she would not chase tonight, that if he showed up, he showed up. And if he did not, she would not go hunting for reasons. 7:30 arrived. Her tea had gone lukewarm. She ordered another out of some strange sense of fairness to the table. This time she added a ginger cookie more for something to do with her hands than because she was hungry. The door opened and closed, each time her shoulders tensed, each time strangers stepped inside and shook snow from their hats. A woman in a red coat, a man carrying a stack of wrapped gifts, two teenagers laughing over something on a phone. Her jaw tightened so slowly she almost did not notice until she forced herself to relax it. On the bus, a recorded voice announced their stop. Marcus tugged the cord. The bus lurched and pulled to the curb with a hiss. When the doors opened, cold slapped them in the face again. Zoe's hand in his felt slightly less warm than before, her fingers stiff in her mitten. "You holding up?" he asked as they stepped down. She nodded, teeth chattering once before she bit them together. "We are close," he said, scanning the street. Belmont was livelier than their neighborhood even in the storm. Cars crawled past tires hissing on slush. The storefronts glowed their displays, layered with decorations and half-price signs. People hurried, heads down, hands stuffed in pockets. He spotted the familiar shape of the chalkboard cup 2 blocks away, its lines fuzzy through the falling snow. "There," he said. "See the sign?" Zoe lifted her face, squinting. "My picture looks better," she said, but there was a small smile in it. At 7:45, Evelyn checked the time again. The tea in front of her was half finished. The ginger cookie sat mostly intact, a single bite missing. Her spine felt too straight. She let herself slouch an inch in the chair, then straightened again. The barista approached, drying her hands on a towel. "I am Lena, by the way," she said. "I realized I have been serving you like a ghost." "Evelyn," she replied. "You look like you are fighting a battle with that cookie," Lena said, nodding at the plate. "I am losing," Evelyn said. Lena smiled. "You do not have to sit here if you do not want to," she said gently. "We have seats away from the door." "I am all right," Evelyn said. "I like watching the snow." It was only half true. Watching the door was the other half. "All right," Lena said, stepping back. "Yell if you need a refill or an alibi." Evelyn let out a breath in something close to a laugh. "Thanks." By 8 o'clock, the crowd had thinned. The family in the corner left in a swirl of coats and scarves, the toddler protesting. The students traded places with a new pair of faces. The man with the newspaper folded it carefully, tucked it under his arm, and buttoned his jacket before stepping outside. The clock on the wall ticked past each minute with no sense of drama. Her phone buzzed once. Her heart jumped, then settled again when she saw the work subject line. She swiped it away without reading. She thought about every time she had sat at a table like this, and watched a door stubbornly refuse to admit the person she hoped would come. There had been fewer of those nights than people assumed, but enough to leave marks. A late college boyfriend who eventually arrived breathless and full of apologies and stories, his collar smelling like unfamiliar perfume. A client who had insisted on dinner to discuss a project, and then sent an assistant in his place with a check and a message. Former partners in business who had talked about loyalty and then met without her when the numbers started to look more interesting elsewhere. She was not a stranger to disappointment. She just preferred it when it arrived clearly labeled and on time. Outside, Marcus and Zoe reached the corner. Her knee had begun to throb. She said nothing, jaw set, but every so often she took a shorter step, the rhythm of their walk hitching. He felt it more than saw it, adjusting his own pace to match. "There," he said, pointing. The copper cup sat ahead window, glowing golden, a small rectangle of warmth in the wash of night. Through the glass, movement shifted and settled. His stomach twisted once in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. "We made it," Zoe said. Zoe said, almost reverent. "Almost," he said. "One more street." They waited at the crosswalk. The light took its time changing. Cars rolled past, tires crunching. Snow swirled around them in lazy spirals. When the signal finally flicked to the little white figure, they stepped off the curb. At 8:15, Evelyn picked up her coat from the back of the chair and smoothed the lapel between her fingers. The fabric held the faint scent of the cedar walls in her closet, familiar and oddly out of place here, where the air smelled like coffee and baked sugar. She slid one arm into a sleeve, then the other, moving slowly, as if speed might change the result. Lena watched from the counter, eyes gentle. "You heading out?" she asked. "I think so," Evelyn said. She reached for her bag on the opposite chair, fingers brushing the pocket where the small snow globe rested. Its weight surprised her. "You can stay as long as you like," Lena said. "We are open till 10, no pressure." "I have taken up enough of your table," Evelyn said. "Trust me, you are better company than some. You did not once ask me for oat milk that does not taste like oats." That pulled a real smile from Evelyn. "Thank you," she said. She reached into her coat pocket, felt the cold, smooth curve of the globe. For a second, she considered leaving it on the table, a tiny city under glass, abandoned to a different story. Her fingers tightened instead. She pushed the chair in with one hand and picked up her mug with the other, carrying it to a tray near the counter. The simple act of clearing the table made the decision feel final. As she turned back toward the door, the bell above it chimed. A gust of air hit her, first sharp and full of snow. The room stirred, heads turning automatically toward the source. In the open door stood a man dusted white from head to toe, his jacket dark and soaked at the shoulders. His breath came in bursts, chest rising and falling. His hair was damp with melted flakes, his face flushed deep where the wind had bitten it. Beside him, a small girl in a puffy coat clung to his hand, curls frizzed with moisture, her cheeks apple red. Her eyes were wide, taking in the lights, the people, the cups on tables. Evelyn's fingers loosened around the snow globe in her pocket. The man's gaze swept the room, skimming tables lingering on the counter, then moved toward the window. When his eyes found hers, something in the air seemed to hold still, the noise of the cafe dropping into a low, distant hum. Her hand froze on the strap of her bag. He looked exactly like his photos and nothing like them at all. Tired and present, worried and relieved in the same breath. For the first time that night, the clock on the wall meant nothing. For a second, nobody moved. The door fluttered on its hinges, letting in one last lick of cold before it swung shut behind them. The girl squeezed the man's hand once, then leaned slightly into his leg. "Dad," she whispered loud enough for the closest tables to hear it, "smells like cookies." A small ripple of laughter passed through the room. The spell broke a little. He lifted a hand to push damp hair back from his forehead, eyes finding Evelyn again and holding there. Up close, she could see the fine lines at the corners, the way they creased in apology even before he spoke. "Evelyn," he said, her name roughened by cold air and nerves. Her fingers tightened on her bag strap, then slowly released. "Marcus," she answered. He let out a breath that was almost a laugh and almost a sigh. "I am so sorry," he said. The bus, everything just..." He stopped, as if the words were knocking into each other in his throat. The girl looked up at him, then at Evelyn, taking in the scene with quick eyes. "You are late," she announced. Not accusing, just reporting. "Yes," Marcus said, glancing down at her. "We are late." Evelyn felt something inside her settle in a way she had not expected. Late, not missing. Present, not imagined. Lena appeared at her elbow. "You can sit," she said to Marcus, nodding towards the table Evelyn had just vacated. "You look like you lost a fight with the storm. I can get towels." Marcus blinked at her, then at Evelyn. "Only if you do not have somewhere you need to be," he said. "If you are already leaving, I understand. I would understand." There were a dozen polite exits available to her in that moment. She saw each one clearly. A tight smile, a line about an early morning, a nod at his daughter, and she could walk back into the night with her walls intact. Instead, she heard her own voice say, steady and surprisingly soft, "Sit down, both of you." Marcus swallowed and nodded once. "Thank you," he said. He guided the girl toward the table by the window. Evelyn stepped aside to let them pass, then placed her bag back on the chair opposite. The snow globe in her pocket bumped against her hip. They sat, the girl between them, coat still on, making a small island of damp fabric and bright eyes. Lena arrived with a clean dish towel and a patient expression. "Hot chocolates," she said, as if reading a menu in her head. "Two, and another peppermint tea." She did not wait for confirmation. Evelyn pulled her coat off again, draping it over the back of her chair. Marcus shrugged out of his, revealing the blue shirt she had seen in a blurry mirror selfie once. It was darker now, soaked through at the shoulders. He rubbed his hands together as if returning feeling to them. "This is Zoe," he said, placing a gentle palm on the girl's shoulder. "My daughter. Zoe, this is Evelyn." Zoe studied her for a long second. Her gaze darted from Evelyn's face to her hair to the watch on her wrist. Then she smiled wide and sudden. "You are the snow globe lady," she said. Heat rose to Evelyn's cheeks. "I guess I am," she said. "Your dad told on me." Zoe nodded, satisfied. "He says you have 5, she said. "I only have 3, but one of mine is broken." The roof came off. "Sounds like better stargazing," Evelyn replied. Zoe's grin widened. "That is what I said." Marcus watched the exchange with something like relief. "I really am sorry," he said again, turning to Evelyn. "I should have been here at 7. I left in time. I thought I left in time." He glanced at the window where snow streaked sideways in the wind. "The babysitter got sick," he said. "Then the bus did not come. Then the next bus crawled. Then she fell." He nodded toward Zoe. "Twice." Zoe stuck out her leg under the table to demonstrate. "Look." She pulled up her pant leg just enough to show a scraped knee with an uneven bandage. Evelyn leaned in, careful not to crowd. "That looks like it hurt," she said. "It did," Zoe replied, "but we kept going." Marcus pressed his lips together for a second. "I should have texted," he said. "My phone died somewhere between our street and the bus stop." I know that sounds like an excuse. It is an excuse, but it is also true. Evelyn listened, hands folded around the warm mug Lena had placed in front of her a few minutes ago. She watched his face as he spoke. The words did not come out in neat lines. They bumped and turned, but they all pointed toward the same place. She thought about the men who had fed her lies that sounded better than truth. Smooth sentences with nothing behind them. Apologies that felt rehearsed, polished to a shine. Marcus looked like a man who did not have time to rehearse much of anything. "Your cheeks are still red," Zoe observed, tilting her head. "You look like you lost a snowball fight." Evelyn smiled. "He said the same thing about himself when he came home earlier," she said. "That is how I know you are related." Zoe's shoulders relaxed a little. Lena reappeared with 2 large mugs topped with whipped cream, a smaller cup balanced on a saucer, and a plate stacked with cookies. "Here we go," she said, setting the cocoa in front of Zoe and Marcus. "Extra hot, extra sweet, and some sugar for the table in case anyone needs it." Marcus reached for his wallet, but she shook her head. "On the house," she said. "Remember what I said earlier about alibis?" She gave Evelyn a quick wink that Zoe did not catch, then drifted back to the counter. For a few beats, they all focused on their cups. Zoe lifted hers, carefully blowing across the surface with serious concentration. A bit of whipped cream stuck to her upper lip. "You have something," Evelyn said, tapping her own face. Zoe wiped at the wrong side, first smearing it farther, then found the right spot. She giggled. "So," Evelyn said, looking at Marcus again, "you brought her." "I did," he said. "I know you did not sign up for that. The plan was to get a sitter." The sitter's body said no. "I almost turned around 3 times. She is the reason we kept going." He nodded toward Zoe with a small smile that held more gratitude than pride. "I like that she is here," Evelyn Sidbeti said. She meant it. The presence of the small person between them shifted the energy, making the situation less like an interview and more like a glimpse into something real. "It is good to meet you, Zoe," she added. "You too," Zoe said, then paused, frowning slightly. "Do I call you Miss Evelyn or just Evelyn or something else?" Evelyn considered. "You can call me Evelyn if you like," she said, "or you can come up with something better later." Zoe nodded slowly. "I will think about it," she said. "I am good with names." They talked first about safe things. Zoe's school, which had a playground that was good but not great. Evelyn's office, which was high, very high, according to Zoe's understanding of skyscrapers. Christmas movies, the kind of cookies on the table. Little by little, as the hot chocolate disappeared and the snow outside thickened, the conversation edged into other territory. "So you are an architect," Evelyn said. Marcus tilted his head in the word landing, as if it had traveled a long distance to reach him. "I was," he said, "before the layoffs." He wrapped his hands around his mug again. "Now I put things together and take them apart," he said. "Shelves, pipes, light fixtures, whatever someone needs and can pay for in cash. There is still design in that," she said quietly, "even if it is not on blueprints." He shrugged one shoulder, uncomfortable with the attention. "What about you?" he asked, redirecting. "I saw the website. You build whole worlds." "Spaces," she corrected gently. "I build spaces. Other people make the worlds in them." She thought of the snow globes on her shelf, each one a miniature space. "It started with a sketchbook, and a lot of bad coffee," she said. "Then one job turned into 3. Someone liked my eye, investors liked my numbers. Now there are meetings and flights and a lot of metal water bottles with the company logo on them." "Do you like it?" he asked. She blinked, surprised by the question. "Most people ask how big the projects are," she said. "I can see that from the photos," he said. "I wanted to know if it still feels like the sketchbook." His words sat between them, gentle and sincere. Zoe traced a circle on the condensation her mug had left on the table, pretending not to listen and failing. "Sometimes it does," Evelyn said after a moment. "When I am alone in the studio with a plan and a pencil. When I see someone sit in a room I drew and relax for the first time. Other times it feels like I am just moving numbers around in different columns." Zoe looked up. "You should put more comfy chairs in the columns," she said. Marcus laughed, the sound easing some of the tightness in his shoulders. "She is not wrong," Evelyn said. "Chairs make a difference." Zoe leaned toward her, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. "Dad falls asleep in chairs sometimes," she whispered, "when he is pretending to watch movies with me." Marcus groaned quietly. "Traitor," he said. "You snore," she added. Evelyn's laughter came easier now. The earlier sting of waiting had not vanished, but it had been joined by something else that diluted it. Outside, the street grew quieter as the storm took over. Inside the cafe, lights reflected in the window, layering their faces over the city in a faint double exposure. Eventually, Lena appeared again, carrying a rag and a gentle smile. "I hate to break up the party," she said, "but we close in 15. Marcus glanced at his watch in disbelief. "I am really sorry," he said. "We did not mean to keep you." "You are fine," she said, "but the snow is getting worse. If you are going to beat it home, you should move soon." Evelyn looked at Zoe's drooping eyelids and the pink that had deepened on her cheeks. "Do you live far?" she asked Marcus. South side, he said. We caught a bus on the way here. I am not sure what is still running. I can drive you, she said. I am not far from here. The car is warm. He opened his mouth to refuse, then looked at Zoe. Her head had begun to list toward his shoulder. Are you sure, he asked. Yes, she said. I would like to see where you live, even if it is just from the street. That is not strange, is it? He thought about it. A little, he said, but a good kind of strange. They thanked Lena. Zoe waved, promising to come back for more hot chocolate. Lena nodded and told her she would save the biggest mug. Outside, the wind cut through the seams of Marcus's coat again. Evelyn led them to a dark sedan parked a few spaces down. As she unlocked it, the interior lights glowed soft and low. Warmth greeted them as they climbed inside the vents, already pushing out heated air. Zoe settled into the back seat, her small body sinking into the upholstery with a contented sigh. This is the softest thing I have ever sat on, she announced. You need more field trips, Evelyn said, catching Marcus's eye in the rearview mirror. He gave a small, crooked smile. The city passed by outside in blurred streaks of white and yellow. In the quiet of the car, the noise of the storm became a muted whisper. Zoe's voice trailed off mid-sentence at one point, replaced by the even rhythm of sleep. Marcus watched her reflection in the window for a moment, then looked at Evelyn. Thank you, he said, for waiting, for staying, for this. You are here, she said simply. That counts. When they pulled up in front of his building, the block looked much as it always did. The plastic snowman in the yard across the street now wore a fresh cap of snow. One upstairs window glowed blue from a television. Marcus turned in his seat. Bug, he said softly, we are home. Zoe stirred, rubbed her eyes, and sat up blinking. Did I miss anything, she asked. Just the best part, he said. You were snoring. I do not snore, she said automatically. He got out and opened her door, steadying her as she climbed down. The snow had eased to a fine mist of powder that drifted in the air. Evelyn lowered her window. Thank you for the ride, Marcus said, and for not turning around when you saw this place. She looked up at the brick facade, the small square windows, the single dim light in the entry. I see a lot of buildings, she said. What matters is what happens inside. He nodded once the words lodging somewhere in his chest. Good night, Evelyn, he said. Good night, Marcus, she replied. She glanced toward Zoe. Good night, Zoe. Zoe lifted a hand in a wave, her eyes already heavy again. Good night, she murmured. He watched the car pull away, taillights glowing until it turned the corner and disappeared. Then he shifted Zoe onto his hip the way he had done since she was a toddler, her arms looping automatically around his neck, and carried her up the stairs, the echo of warmth from the cafe and the car following them into the thin light of the stairwell. The next morning, Christmas light looked different. It came in thin and clear through the gaps in the blinds in 3B, settling in strips across the floor and catching the dust in slow-moving columns. The apartment smelled like reheated soup and the faint sweet trace of cocoa that had soaked into Zoe's coat. Marcus woke to the sound of quiet breathing from the next room, and the memory of warm air in a car, soft jazz on a cafe speaker, and Evelyn's face across a small table. For a second he wondered if he had imagined it, if the snow and the running and the late hour had turned a simple night into something his mind wanted it to be. On the coffee table, 3 paper cups from the Copper Cup sat rinsed and drying, their logos faint but real. He let himself smile. Zoe wandered out of her room sometime after 8, hair flattened on one side, clutching the drawing she had made at Mrs. Alvarez's table. Did it happen? She asked. It did, he said. Good, she replied, satisfied. Because I told Mrs. Alvarez you were going to marry the snow globe lady. He choked on a sip of lukewarm coffee. You what? Not now, she said, rolling her eyes. Later, when you are less poor. He laughed until he had to sit down, the sound filling the little room. Please do not say that to her, he said, any of it. I will not, she said, but there was a spark of mischief in her eyes that made him nervous. Across the city in the penthouse that looked over the river, Evelyn padded barefoot into the kitchen and stared at the snow globe she had set on the counter the night before. The little city inside it had settled. Flakes rested on miniature rooftops. The glass caught the morning light, sending a small bright spot onto the back of her hand. Her phone lay beside it, screen dark. She touched the side button and watched it wake. No new messages. She exhaled and opened the thread anyway, rereading the last few lines. Marcus, thank you for the ride. Evelyn, thank you for the night. Sleep. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard for a moment. Merry Christmas, she typed. She deleted the period, then added it again. It felt too formal without it, too casual with nothing. She sent it. The reply came a few minutes later, while she was measuring coffee into the machine. Marcus, Merry Christmas. Zoe says thank you for the cookies. Also, she says your car smells nice. That is a compliment here. Evelyn smiled, the expression surprising her in its ease. Evelyn, tell her she is welcome, and that her drawing was excellent architecture. She slid the phone into the pocket of her robe and let the smell of brewing coffee fill the quiet. In the days that followed, they found a rhythm without naming it. Work picked back up after the holiday. Trucks needed loading, pipes leaked, clients returned from vacations with ideas saved from glossy pages on planes. Snow turned to slush and then back to snow again. On a Tuesday evening, a week after their first meeting at the Copper Cup, Evelyn stood in the small lobby of Marcus's building, balancing a grocery bag in each hand. Her boots left melting prints on the cracked tile. She had argued with herself in the car all the way over, telling herself he would take it the wrong way, that he would see numbers in everything she brought. The thought of him opening the fridge to nothing but condiments had decided it for her. The door to the stairwell opened. Marcus stepped through, slightly out of breath, from the climb phone in one hand. He stopped when he saw her surprise flickering across his face. "Hey," he said, "you found it." "I did," she said. "Your directions were very precise. Left at the Leaning Snowman." "He has seen some things," Marcus said, glancing past her toward the crooked plastic figure in the yard. "What is all that?" "Groceries," she said, shifting the bags. "I made a mistake with an order. They delivered to the office and I do not really cook. I thought you might be able to use them." He looked at her, then at the bags, then back at her. For a moment she saw the pride she had worried about rise up in his eyes. "I can pay you for some of it," he said. "Half, or something." "You cannot," she said gently, "because I will not let you. Just say you are helping me clear my conscience for overbuying." His mouth quirked. "Do rich people feel guilty about groceries?" he asked. "Some of us feel guilty about almost everything," she said. "At least let me feel useful in this one small way." He considered her for a long moment. There was no pity in her gaze, no tally sheet she could see, just an offer held out with open hands. "All right," he said finally, "but you have to stay for dinner so you can see how your investment turns out." She blinked. "I did not mean to invite myself," she said. "You did not," he replied. "I am inviting you. It is different." He took one of the bags, surprised at the weight. Cans knocked together inside, solid and promising. He led the way up the stairs, pausing to hold the door open for her at the top. Zoe was sitting at the table when they entered, coloring a picture of a tree that took up most of the page. She looked up, saw Evelyn, and froze for a beat. "You came," she said, dropping the crayon. "I did," Evelyn said, "and I brought food." Zoe peered into the bag Marcus set on the counter. "You have noodles that are not from a box," she said. "That is fancy." "They are just noodles," Evelyn said. "They might be smaller than you are used to." "Then I can eat more," Zoe replied. Dinner was simple and crowded the small kitchen, filled with the smell of garlic and tomato, and something new that came from having 3 bodies moving in a space designed for 2. Evelyn chopped onions while Marcus stirred sauce. Zoe grated cheese with great seriousness, little curls falling onto a plate. There were no matching plates. One had a chip, one had a faded cartoon character in the center, one had a restaurant logo from a place that had closed years before. Evelyn found she liked them. Afterward, they crammed onto the couch to watch a movie on an old television. The picture was slightly fuzzy at the edges, but the story was clear enough. Halfway through, Zoe slumped sideways until her head rested on Evelyn's thigh. Evelyn stared down at the dark curls for a second, unsure. Then she let her hand rest lightly on the girl's shoulder. The weight of it felt right. From his armchair, Marcus watched them both, something unreadable flickering over his features. He caught her eye once. She looked back, the question she could not name hovering between them. On another night, a few days later, Marcus stood awkwardly in the lobby of Evelyn's building, feeling like his boots left permanent marks on the polished floor. A sleek console table stood near the elevators, holding a bowl of polished stones and a vase of branches. The security guard at the desk gave him a neutral nod, his gaze taking in Marcus's work jacket and the lunch cooler in his hand. "She said she would tell you I was coming," Marcus said, feeling suddenly underdressed. "She did," the guard replied. "Top floor, elevators on the left." The ride up felt like moving through a different kind of snowlight, and sound blurring as he ascended. When the doors opened straight into her living room, he had to pause. Windows stretched from floor to ceiling. The city reached out in every direction, lights flickering at different depths. The air smelled like lemon and something floral. "You made it," Evelyn said, stepping toward him from the open kitchen. She was barefoot in jeans and a soft black sweater, hair loose around her shoulders. The sight unsettled him more than the view. He held up the lunch cooler. "I brought real coffee," he said, "from a place on my route. The guy owes me for fixing his shelf." Her eyes lit with something like delight. "You keep showing up with practical miracles," she said. "Come in." He set the cooler on the counter, and looked around, taking in the careful arrangement of furniture, the art on the walls, the shelf with the row of snow globes. He walked to it, slowly drawn there. "Is that the one you had in your pocket?" he asked, nodding at the small city under glass. "It is," she said. "I almost left it on the table that night." "I am glad you did not," he said. "It fits here." She watched him as he studied each globe. "Zoe would like the one with the crooked house," he said. "She would say it looks like ours." "Then she has to come see it," Evelyn said. He turned. "Are you sure?" he asked. "This place is a long way from her normal. I do not know how much of this world is mine to let her into." "This is your world too, if you are standing in it," she said. "And she is part of you." He opened his mouth, then closed it. The logic was simple and strangely painful. They sat on the sofa with mugs of coffee that smelled stronger and richer than anything her machine had ever produced. He listened to her talk about a project she was redesigning from scratch, a house on a hill for a family that could not agree on anything. She listened as he described the satisfaction of fixing a leak that had been driving a tenant crazy for weeks. "You stay until it is done," she said. "Someone has to," he replied. The weeks slid by, winter easing its hold only to grip again. On a Saturday afternoon, they met at a neighborhood winter fair near Marcus's place. String lights were strung between bare trees, and folding tables held crafts made from colored paper and old jars. There was a small stage where a girl with a guitar sang into a microphone that crackled. Zoe darted from booth to booth, cheeks bright, a knitted hat pulled low. She insisted on trying every sample of homemade fudge, declaring herself an expert by the third piece. Evelyn bought a snow globe from a man selling handmade ones at the end of the row. It was simple, a glass jar turned upside down with a tiny clay figure of a child and an adult holding hands glued to the lid. Glitter drifted inside when she shook it. "How many is that now?" Marcus asked. "Enough," she said, "for a small village." "Is there room for us in there?" he asked, nodding at the tiny figures. "There might be," she said, her voice softening. As winter leaned toward something that almost resembled spring, the snow piled on the edges of sidewalks shrank to gray ridges. Puddles formed at corners. The air still bit, but less sharply. One evening after Zoe had joined a spontaneous game of tag with kids in the courtyard of their building, Marcus and Evelyn walked side by side along a path through a nearby park. The ground was a patchwork of old snow and muddy grass. The trees stood bare, their branches etched dark against a pale sky. They talked about nothing in particular. A neighbor who always played loud music at odd hours. A client of hers who wanted a chandelier made out of antlers. Zoe's obsession with a picture book about space. Their hands swung at their sides close enough that their fingers brushed now and then. Each contact sent a small, sharp awareness up Marcus's arm. At one point, he let his hand drift a little closer, his knuckles just grazing hers. She did not move away. Instead, her fingers turned slightly, meeting his. The next time they bumped, neither of them shifted aside. He hesitated for the span of a breath, then let his hand slide into hers, their fingers fitting together in a way that felt both new and oddly familiar. They walked like that in silence for a few steps. The park around them carried the faint sounds of distant traffic and a dog barking. A plane passed overhead, a thin line across the fading light. When he glanced at her, she was looking ahead, a small, quiet smile on her face, the kind reserved for moments that did not need explaining. The cold came back one more time before winter let go for good. It arrived on a Tuesday, a sharp wind cutting through the soft days that had started to feel like a promise. In the park where they had walked before the half-melted snow turned brittle again, the muddy paths stiffening under a thin crust of ice. Marcus checked the weather on his phone out of habit and then laughed at himself. Snow or no snow, Zoe would still want to go out after school. She had a new scarf from Evelyn, technically a hand-me-down, but so soft that Zoe had declared it magic. By late afternoon, the sky had taken on a clear, hard blue. Breath smoked in front of mouths again. Marcus and Zoe met Evelyn at the entrance to the park. She stood stamping 1 foot, lightly gloved hands tucked under her arms, her hair pulled back under a knit hat. "You are early," she said when they reached her. "Zoe runs faster when it is cold," Marcus said. "Her legs think they are in a race." "I am winning," Zoe announced, even though no one had challenged her. They walked together along the main path. Bundled figures passed in the opposite direction, heads down, faces briefly visible between scarves and hats. A boy dragged a stick along the metal fence, making a low clattering sound that faded as he moved away. At the small bridge that crossed the creek, Zoe stopped. "Can I go look at the ice?" she asked, already stepping toward the railing. "Stay where we can see you," Marcus said. "No climbing." "I will not climb," she said, half offended, then hurried ahead anyway. She reached the center of the bridge and pressed her mittened hands to the railing, leaning forward to watch thin sheets of ice float slowly under the arch. Her breath made small clouds that drifted away on the breeze. Marcus and Evelyn followed at a slower pace, their boots crunching lightly on the path. "She is doing better," Evelyn said quietly. "She laughs more." He nodded. "She has more to laugh about," he said. He did not say that he had heard her talking softly to the photo on the fridge at night, explaining who Evelyn was describing the snow globe shelf, like a story. He did not say that the fear in Zoe's eyes when she asked if Evelyn was coming back had become less sharp, and more like a question she believed could be answered. They stopped a few steps behind Zoe, close enough that he could reach her quickly if she slipped. The wind pushed at their coats. "She likes you," he added, looking at Evelyn. She tilted her head. "I like her too," she said. "She is very clear about what she thinks." That is one way to put it. There was a pause. The sounds of the park thinned. A dog barked in the distance. Marcus shifted his weight from one foot to the other. The words in his chest had been gathering for days, maybe weeks. They had sat there while he stirred sauce, while he fixed leaking pipes, while he watched Evelyn across her own kitchen counter. He had not decided yet whether saying them out loud was wise. He was not sure wisdom applied anymore. "I have been thinking," he said. "That sounds serious," she replied, glancing at him. "Some of it is," he said. "Some of it is simple." He watched Zoe throw a small stick onto the ice and laugh as it slid. "Go on," Evelyn said. He rubbed his thumb across the seam of his glove, grounding himself in the feel of worn leather. "I am falling in love with you," he said. The words hung in the cold air, visible only in the way his breath shivered around them. He did not look at her right away. He watched the creek instead, the gray water moving beneath the surface of the ice, steady and different. "I know that is not the most strategic thing to say," he went on. "Our lives do not match on paper. You have floors that open into living rooms. I have radiators that sometimes work. You move numbers with your pen. I stack them in a line and hand them to a landlord." He finally met her eyes. "But you are the first thing I think about when I wake up," he said. "After I make sure Zoe is still breathing, you are the last thing I think about when the building goes quiet. When something good happens, I want to tell you. When something breaks, I picture how you would design it better." He gave a small, almost embarrassed shrug. "I do not know what to do with all of that except be honest." Evelyn's cheeks were already pink from the wind. Now they deepened another shade. Her eyes did not leave his. "I have been trying not to say it," she said slowly, "because I thought if I said it, it might scare you, or me, or both." She glanced at Zoe, who had moved to the other side of the bridge and was now tapping the ice with the toe of her boot. "The night you crashed into the Copper Cup late, and soaked, and full of apologies, I felt something shift," she said. "I have not really felt that in a long time. I kept telling myself it was just the storm, or the timing, or the novelty of meeting someone who did not treat me like a project or a prize." Her mouth curved. "It has not gone away," she said. "So, I think I am also in love with you, for whatever that is worth." A laugh escaped him, soft and disbelieving. "That is worth everything," he said. He stepped closer, closing the small space between them. His hand rose almost of its own accord, fingertips brushing the edge of her hat, then her cheek. Her skin felt cool under his hand, but there was warmth there too. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. "Yes," she said. The kiss was not dramatic. There were no fireworks besides the small sparks that went off under his ribs and along her spine. It was careful and sure, two people who had been walking parallel finally turning toward each other. When he pulled back, Zoe's voice floated over. "I saw that she called. My eyes are very strong." Marcus groaned, dropping his forehead briefly to Evelyn's shoulder. She laughed, the sound bright and uncontrollable. "You were supposed to be looking at the ice," he said. "I have peripheral vision," she answered. "Also, that means she likes us right." Evelyn turned toward her. "It does," she said. Zoe beamed. That night, after Zoe had fallen asleep with her book open on her chest, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with a stack of unpaid bills and a flyer from the building management announcing a rent increase. The numbers on the page did not care about the kiss in the park or the warmth in his chest. They added up the same way they always did, too fast and not in his favor. His phone buzzed. "Evelyn, my board wants to move our weekly dinner meetings back to nights again. They say I have been leaving the office too early." He stared at the words, picturing her in the glass tower, surrounded by people who saw her as a set of decisions instead of a person. "Marcus, what did you say?" "Evelyn, that they could call my calendar and negotiate. They did not find it as funny as I did." He smiled despite the heaviness of his own papers. "Marcus, how late is late?" "Evelyn, late enough that I would not see you or Zoe during the week." They did not say that part out loud, but it was implied. He traced the edge of a past due notice with his thumb. Marcus, you worked hard for that company. Hard is an understatement. Evelyn, I did. I still am. But I am starting to wonder who owns my time, them or me. He understood that more than he wanted to. Marcus, I do not want to be the reason you lose anything. Evelyn, maybe I am done losing myself to keep other people comfortable. The words sat on the screen like a line drawn in faint pencil, ready to be gone over in ink. He hesitated, then typed, Marcus, for what it is worth, Zoe already decided you are part of the package. That seems hard to undo. Evelyn, remind me never to negotiate against her. The rent notice on the table loomed. The two worlds he was trying to stand in pulled at different sides of him. He could feel the gap between their bank accounts, their schedules, their expectations. A few days later, that gap showed itself more plainly. He came home early from a job to find a box on his doorstep. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a brand new winter coat, small, bright purple, with a hood lined in faux fur. Zoe's size. A card lay on top. Saw this and thought of her. It was on sale. Zoe found it before he had decided what to do. Her squeal filled the hallway. Is it for me? She asked already, shrugging out of her old coat with the frayed cuffs. He looked at the card, then at her lit face. It is, he said. She slipped it on. It fit perfectly. I look like a superhero, she announced, spinning once. I am warm girl. He smiled, but something knotted in his stomach. The old coat mended twice at the sleeves lay on the couch like a shed skin. He picked it up, thumb brushing over the stitches he had sewn himself. That evening, when Evelyn came by for dinner, he waited until Zoe had gone to her room to find a book before he spoke. You did not have to buy her a coat, he said. His voice came out more clipped than he intended. She blinked. She needed one, she said. Her wrists were showing. I know what she needs, he said. I am her father. Her shoulders tightened. I did not mean you did not, she said. It was a gift, not a correction. He held up the old coat. This looks like a correction, he said. She took in the worn fabric, the crooked repairs, the way his fingers gripped it. Marcus, she said quietly, she was cold. And now she is wearing something I could not afford, without feeling it. Every time I open my wallet, he said, you can buy 10 of those without blinking. Is that the problem, she asked, that I did not blink enough? He flinched at the edge in her voice. I do not want her to think what she has is not good enough, he said. I do not want to stand next to you and feel like I am always coming up short in front of my own kid. Evelyn looked at him, really looked, seeing the tension in his jaw, the way his shoulders had crept up near his ears. I am not keeping score, she said. I am trying to make sure someone I care about is warm in winter. Zoe reappeared in the doorway, book in hand, sensing the shift in volume, even if she did not understand the words. Are you mad? She asked. The room went quiet. Marcus dropped his gaze to the floor for a moment, then forced it back up. I am not mad at you, he said. Are you mad at her? Zoe asked. The question landed between them like another bill on the table. No, he said. The word sat heavy and true. I am mad at a world where a coat is a statement instead of just a coat. Zoe frowned, not entirely satisfied with the answer, but she patted over to Evelyn and slipped her hand into hers. I like the coat, she said, and I like her. Can we keep both? Evelyn's mouth twisted into a small, tired smile. That is up to your dad, she said. Marcus looked at the two of them, at their joined hands at the bright purple hood, bunched at the back of Zoe's neck. The knot in his chest loosened just enough for air to pass through. We will figure it out, he said. That night, after Evelyn had gone home after Zoe had fallen asleep in the new coat, because she refused to take it off, he sat alone at the table, with the old one in his lap. His fingers followed the path of his own stitches, the places where he had tried to patch what he had. His phone buzzed. Evelyn, I do not know how to do this perfectly. I'm going to make mistakes. Please tell me when I do like tonight, but do not shut me out. He stared at the lines, then typed back. Marcus, I do not know how to let someone in without feeling like I am failing at something. He deleted the last two words and sent it anyway. A reply came. Evelyn, maybe we are both learning new skills. I am good with space. You are good with structure. We can adjust. He read the message twice, then folded the old coat carefully and set it aside. Not in the trash, not on the hook, somewhere in between. Spring arrived quietly. It did not show up all at once with blossoms and sunshine. It crept in along the edges of the city. Snowbanks shrank from mountains to tired gray ridges. Puddles spread at intersections. The air still bit at cheeks in the morning, but loosened its grip by afternoon. On a Sunday, the sky finally turned a clear, uncomplicated blue. The kind of blue that made people lean their faces up for a moment without thinking about it. Marcus sat at the kitchen table with his watch lying face up on a folded dish towel. The back lay beside it, the tiny screws arranged in a careful line. Zoe perched on the chair opposite Chin in her hands, watching as if it were surgery. "Are you sure you know how to do that?" she asked. "No," he said, "but I am trying anyway." He adjusted the tiny gear with the tip of a toothpick tongue, pressing against his teeth in concentration. The kitchen smelled like coffee, and the orange slices Zoe had eaten for breakfast. Light fell across the table in a wide stripe. "Why does it matter?" she asked. "You have the stove clock, and your phone, and my voice yelling, 'We are late!'" He smiled without looking up. "Maybe it does not," he said. "Maybe I just want this to work again." He settled the gear into place, fitting its teeth against another. Then he eased the back of the watch on and pressed until it clicked softly. He turned the small knob, setting the hands to the correct time, and listened. The faint tick started again, steady and even. "See," he said, holding it up. Zoe leaned forward. "It sounds like a cricket," she said. "A tiny metal cricket that lives on your arm." He laughed and fastened the watch to his wrist. Later, while Zoe was at a friend's apartment in the building, he walked to the park alone. The ground was more grass than snow now. The creek moved freely under the bridge, only a few stubborn sheets of ice clinging to the shaded banks. He took out his phone and scrolled to Evelyn's name. "Can you meet me at the Copper Cup this afternoon?" he wrote. "One more time." Her reply came quickly. "Tell me when, and I will be there." 3:00 the clock he sent. The bell over the cafe door sounded the same in spring as it had in winter. The air inside was warmer in a different way, less from heaters and more from bodies shedding coats and lingering over iced drinks. Lena looked up from the counter and smiled. "Well, look who is back with less snow attached," she said. Marcus smiled. "Less snow," he said. "Same nerves?" "Your usual table is open," she said, nodding toward the spot by the window. He sat, pressing his palms briefly against his knees to keep them still. His watch ticked. The street outside was busy. People moved in lighter jackets. A bike bell rang bright and sharp. When the door opened again 10 minutes later, Evelyn walked in with the same careful step he remembered from December, but this time her shoulders were relaxed. Her coat was thinner, her sweater a soft green that made her eyes look different in the light. She saw him and smiled in a way that made the noise of the cafe recede a little. "You are early," she said, slipping into the seat across from him. "I had help from a tiny cricket," he said, tapping the watch. Lena appeared with 3 cups balanced on a tray. "Hot chocolate for the boss who is late." "Apparently," she said, setting 1 cup down at the empty chair between them. "Coffee for you, tea for you." She moved her eyes between Marcus and Evelyn, amusement tucked at the corners of her mouth. "Zoe is at a friend's," Marcus said. "She made me promise to bring her something." "I will put extra whipped cream in a to-go cup," Lena replied. "On the house." She left them with their drinks. Evelyn wrapped her hands around her mug. "You sounded serious in your message," she said. "Are you all right?" He swallowed. The words were easier this time, even though what he was about to say made his pulse jump. "I have been thinking about that night," he said. "The first time you waited for me here. You had every reason to leave. Anyone would have. You stayed." She looked at him over the rim of her mug. "I almost did not," she admitted. "I stood up. I put on my coat. Then the door opened, and you let half the storm in." "Sorry about that," he said, smiling. "I am not," she said. He reached into his jacket pocket, fingers brushing velvet. For a second he paused, feeling the shape of the box. Then he set it gently on the table between her tea and the empty chair. Evelyn's breath caught almost inaudibly. "Marcus," she said, his name a question and a warning and a hope. "Let me say this," he said quietly, "before I overthink it and start talking about radiators." She laughed once the sound thin and nervous. He looked at her hands. They were steady on the mug fingers, long and sure. Then he met her eyes. "My life is messy," he said. "It does not always run on time. I lose fights with snow and I patch things more than I buy new ones. There are bills on my table that do not care how I feel." He nodded toward the window, toward the buildings outside. "Your life is big," he said. "People listen when you talk. You have rooms with walls you designed yourself. You have chairs that cost more than my car." Her lips twitched. "Some of them are not that comfortable," she said. He smiled. "What I am trying to say is that I do not have anything shiny to add to your world," he said. "I cannot promise trips or houses with 10 bathrooms or a staircase that shows up in a magazine. I can promise something else." He opened the velvet box. Inside, on a small cushion, sat a simple ring. A narrow band, a single stone that caught the light like a tiny piece of captured morning. Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes filled faster than she could blink the tears away. "I can promise to keep showing up," he said. "Even when it is hard, even when it is late, even when I have to walk through a storm with a 7-year-old who thinks she is a superhero, I can promise to love you the same way I love her. Honest and all in. No pretending, no performance. He took a breath. I can promise that if you choose us, you are not just getting me, he said. You are getting late nights helping with homework and early mornings with cereal and cartoons. You are getting a family that has lost and still chooses to try again. His voice shook once. He let it. Evelyn Hart, he asked, will you marry me? For a split second, the whole cafe seemed to lean in. The whistle of the espresso machine softened. Pages stopped turning. Someone's spoon paused halfway to their mouth. She lowered her hand from her face. Tears shone on her cheeks. She did not wipe them away. Yes, she said. The word came out in a whisper that grew stronger as she repeated it. Yes. Yes. His shoulders dropped with relief he had not let himself anticipate. He picked up the ring with fingers that were steadier than he felt and reached for her hand. Her fingers trembled when he slid the ring on, then curled briefly around his before letting go. Lena appeared at the edge of the table, eyes bright and damp. I knew I should have brought tissues, she said. Someone at the counter clapped once, then again. A ripple of applause moved through the small room. A man in the corner whistled. The older woman at a window seat dabbed her eyes. Evelyn laughed through her tears, the sound raw and full. When the noise settled, Marcus reached into his other pocket and pulled out something small and round, wrapped in tissue paper. There is more, she asked, voice unsteady. Just one thing, he said. He unwrapped it and set it on the table. A snow globe, small, made of glass and metal, its base plain. Inside, under a dusting of still flakes, stood a tiny house and 3 figures in front of it. 2 taller, 1 shorter, all holding hands. Evelyn stared at it, then at him. I cannot compete with your collection, he said, but I thought maybe we could start one together. She reached toward it with both hands, as if worried it might disappear, and cradled it in her palms. The flakes lifted in a slow swirl when she tilted it. I love it, she said, more than any of the others. He believed her. Later that week, they sat at a kitchen table that was not his and not hers. The room belonged to a small house on a quiet street between downtown and the south side. The paint on the walls fresh, the floors still smelling faintly of varnish. Sunlight poured in through the bound window, lighting up dust motes that had not yet settled. A yard stretched out beyond the glass, edged by a fence that needed painting. There was space for a small garden and a patch of grass that could handle a swing set. Zoe had taken 3 full laps around the house the first time she saw it, opening every door, twice testing every light switch. Where will my room be, she had asked. Where do you want it, Marcus had replied. Now she sat between them on the new sofa feet, not quite reaching the floor, the purple coat puddled at her side. When do we move all our stuff, she asked. As soon as we finish arguing about where the couch goes, Evelyn said. We are not arguing, Marcus said. We are having a passionate discussion about sight lines. Zoe groaned softly. You are both weird, she said, but this is better than the old place. He raised an eyebrow. Because it is bigger, he asked. Because it is ours, she said simply. She leaned into Evelyn's side head, resting against her shoulder, and looked up at Marcus. Is this what Mom meant, she asked, when she said we would find our way back to happy? The room went very quiet. Outside, a dog barked once, then settled. A car drove past its engine, humming low. Marcus met Evelyn's eyes over Zoe's head. There was no pity there, no shadow, only understanding. He reached out and smoothed a hand over Zoe's hair. Yeah, Bug, he said. This is exactly what she meant. Evelyn slid her arm around Zoe and reached across to take Marcus's hand. Their fingers laced together easily, the way they had in the park, the way they had in spaces that belonged to other people. Now in this room with light on the walls and boxes still stacked in the hallway, the fit felt different. It felt like something they had built together even if the paint was still drying. On a shelf near the kitchen, the snow globes stood in a new row, old ones chipped and polished, and the newest one with the tiny house and 3 figures beneath a swirl of quiet white. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.